Almeria, for instance, would be maybe Transjordan settlers. I'm not sure you could check out the actors. You can read the Spanish histories. Northern Arabian settlers would go to a different Spanish town. Palestinian ones, Syrian ones would go to a different one. And these towns in Spain all became part of this tribal situation from the Arabian, Northern Arabia, and the areas in Jordan and Syria. And they brought their animosities with them there in terms of which governors they supported, which they did not. Governors were assassinated, the struggles were going on almost from the beginning. And in the Umayyad family itself, depending on who a given caliph married and who was his favorite wife among his harem or whatever, some would be Qais, some would be Kalb, some would have Qais sympathies, some Kalb sympathies, and that undermined to some extent the Umayyad dynasty. Now, this is very complicated. It would have to be a much more serious history course than we're just giving a sketch here. But that's part of the Umayyad tribal ethos. I told you before, the Umayyads, you see right from the get-go, the Kharijis thought Ali was a bad Muslim for negotiating with them. What did the Kharijis think of the Umayyads? Well, they didn't even think they were Muslims at all. And, there were Muslims upon Muslims upon Muslims, good Muslims and bad Muslims. Pious Muslims of the kind you might get today in Indonesia or Malaysia or Pakistan, and bad Muslims of the kind you might go, the ones that, like Ali Khan, that go to the Riviera or something and gamble and drive racing cars and drink alcohol and enjoy all the corrupted Western pleasures that are often associated with being a playboy. Princess Diana's boyfriend, I don't think he would have been considered a very good Muslim. He liked fast cars, drinking, yachts, stuff like that. He was not interested in prayer. So, you have good Muslims, you have bad Muslims, but you don't make war on them unless you're a Khariji-minded person, extremist. Which is what's happening in the Muslim world today, because the lukewarm Muslims, or the average person, they don't make war on anybody, they just want to live. But if there's a group of people who are prepared to make war on others, they can intimidate the others. And the others don't have the wherewithal or the force of character or even the ability to resist. So they crumble under the assault of that kind of thing. Take the Palestine problem. I don't want to get into political things, but I think the Palestine problem could easily have been solved decades ago by people of goodwill on both sides. If it hadn't degenerated into the kind of violence we now see, and one side blaming the other, and then grudges and blood feuds and whatever grievances, real or imagined, develop. So now the solution is almost impossible. Meanwhile, the economy collapses. Nobody can make a living. There's nobody working in Gaza, and so on and so forth. And so the whole thing becomes worse and worse and worse and worse. I'm not saying what the good or bad reason is. So, when you get committed people who are prepared to intimidate other people, the other people really often don't have the ability to resist that. So the real deep believer has a huge advantage over the average sort of just a person who's trying to muddle through. And I think we're seeing that in Baghdad today. That's the same kind of thing. The people who have a real commitment can totally overwhelm the people who are just trying to get on with their lives. And I don't have the answer for that. I'm saying that's something to always think about when you have this situation of committed people versus just average people who may or may not have a big commitment to anything. Just live their lives as best they can. Anyway, so the Umayyad Caliphate was looked upon as an Arab caliphate. Umayyad caliphs were looked upon like Arab tribal kings or chieftains, not like real caliphs, not real successors. And the animosity grew in places like Medina rather intensely. particularly among Alid people who thought they had been badly done by, but also the forces of the Caliphate, the ones who had been defeated by Ali in the Battle of the Camel, the Abdullah, the Omar groups, who were Sunnis, but were also very pious Muslims too. So there's a whole range of people who were against the Umayyads, and that discontent was fermenting and fermenting and fermenting from the 780s on into from the 680s on into the 740s. As one Umayyad caliph succeeded another, and they grew weaker and weaker. And the empire was more out of control and more out of control. Well, there were a lot of revolts down in Arabia proper. That was a hotbed of revolt because of the pious feeling down there. And one of the revolts was put down by this famous Umayyad civil servant, had been a school teacher in Mecca. His name was Al-Hajjaj. He'd been a school teacher in Mecca, but he became I guess as a school teacher, learned how to be stern, like me. I'm stern. Maybe I could put down revolts. I doubt it. And he was able to put down revolts of disaffected groups, Harjis and others in the Mecca area. One of these revolt situations resulted in the taking of the stone, the black stone, away from the Kaaba and it being broken at that time, as I told you, because of people dragging it away and then dragging it back and fighting over it and things like that. And Hajjaj became a really seriously repressive governor for the Umayyads, a very successful one. They finally put him in control of all the Umayyad armies in Iraq, and he put down rebellion in Iraq, and finally he was the general that took them all the way to India, made the conquests in 710 in India. So it's an illustrious career. I just mentioned him in passing as a representative of the kind of civil servant, military commander that grew up under the Umayyads. And when we do Islamic law, I'm going to also show you how the principles of Islamic law started to take hold in the Umayyad period too. What we ultimately end up calling Sharia. Now you have some textbooks. Keep up with me in your textbooks. If you have the Give book, start reading about Sharia. He has a lot of chapters about the Hadith and things like that. If you're reading Bernard Lewis, The Arabs in History, read about the caliphates. Get another view than mine. Mine isn't the only view. If you have another book besides those books, any book will do. Just get some more views. That will give you a balance if you think I'm imbalanced. Do read, and everything you read will widen your perspective. So I don't have the book in front of me. Anyone got a book, I'll tell you what is relevant. If you have a book, show it to me.